Brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's what Millsy. Back with Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew my version 1.0 deck list of the Commander in front of us on my quest out brew Magic World. Today we're tackling the alternate commander for that most wanted precon in Vihaan, Goldwaker. A 3-mana 3/3 dwarf warlock. This is other outlaws you control have vigilance and haste. Remember, outlaws are assassins, mercenaries, pirates, rogues, and warlocks. And the real reason we're playing Vhan is at the beginning of combat on your turn, you may have treasures you control become 3/3 construct assassin artifact creatures in addition to their other types until end of turn. So Vhan has a lot of text and some reality on it, but I think the really important about here is we get to turn all of our treasures into assassins, but those assassins have vigilance and haste because of Vhan's ability. And this is really important for two reasons. One, because that means even if we make treasures this turn, they can turn into a creature's attack. But two, remember that treasures have to tap and sacrifice in order to get mana, meaning we can technically attack and still use their ability for mana in the same turn, which we'll talk about a little bit when we get further in. So we're going to talk about how we're going to try to make some treasures. We're in the perfect 3 colors for it, and we're going to make a ton of treasures. Some payoffs we have, some ways we're going to make our combat a lot more threatening to our opponent, and then some effects that are going to help us move towards ending the game, hopefully pretty quickly. But as far as making treasure goes, well, there's a lot of ways we can approach this. Goldspan Dragon's a kind of a factory for treasures, not only just making one every time it attacks, but allowing all of our treasures to add 2 mana instead of 1. Grim Hireling, whenever one more creatures we control deal damage to a player, we create 2 treasures. This is really great because if we're attacking with treasures and hitting people with treasures, we're getting more treasures, and Grim Hireling gives us the privilege to have a little bit of removal on the bottom. Olivia Outlaw, the main commander, that most wanted precon, will give us treasures anytime one or more outlaws deal damage to a player, and then we can sacrifice 2 treasures to put counters on all of our creatures across the board, which can be very beneficial when we're trying to build up over time. Zorn can get us an extra treasure anytime we make a treasure, which is a great ability, and we don't mind it not being an outlaw because that ability is really going to help us out. Blood Money is our big board wipe of choice, but we get a tap treasure for every non-token creature destroyed this way. We may not mind that, depending on the board state, especially if we can just play Vihaan the next turn and give them all haste and get into swinging. We're playing the pair of Big Score and Unexpected Windfall for some draw and some treasures, and then 2 heavy hitters in the deck, Smothering Tithe and the Reaver Cleaver. Smothering Tithe, of course, being pretty well known at this point. When our opponent draws a card, they can pay 2. If they don't, you get a treasure. And the Reaver Cleaver are going to giving us reasons to get into combat, giving a creature +1/+1 and trample, and whenever that creature does damage to a player or planeswalker, we make that many treasures. Again, we want to just be amassing treasures, so that way whether we use them to cast more things or attack with them with Vhan's ability and then sacrifice them for more things, we're just getting a ton of value. But as far as payoffs go, we have things like Reckless Fireweaver. They're going to deal damage to opponent each time an artifact comes in. There's something like Mirkwood Bats that does double duty because it's going to have everybody lose a life when we make the treasures, but then if we ever sacrifice the treasures for mana, Mirkwood Bats will do another life to each of our opponents. And then Rainerich is just a great card, coming in, making us 2 treasures, and then whenever we cast a spell, first one each turn that use mana from a spell, treasure to cast it, has Cascade, getting us into more cards from our deck and getting more pieces on board. Well, we don't just want to dump our entire game plan into treasures. You know, we want these treasures to attack. Vihaan gives us this ability, and we want to take real advantage of it. But we want to get them in there safely if possible. Shared Animosity is just going to probably threaten a lot of people to deal with or block somehow. You know, if we have 5 or 6 treasures, they're now getting +5, +0, +6, +0, +7, +0, being, 10 threes, 11 threes, 9 threes. That we're going to become more and more needing for opponents to block, and maybe that's an easy way to trade our creatures for theirs. But as we'll talk about later, still get some of our abilities when those treasures die. Luciel is going to prevent all combat damage that will be dealt to attacking artifact creatures, meaning those treasures get to stay alive even after they get blocked or what have you. And then whenever one or more artifact creatures ETB, we draw a card, which isn't as an important of ability as that top one is. Tempered Steel, giving them all a flat +2/+2 is important, making them 5/5s instead of 3/3s, making them harder to deal with. I really like that Knife Point in this deck, giving them all first strike with their vigilance and haste, meaning they're just a teeny bit harder to block now, and they're not going to be as free and easy to block or be able to be potentially traded into like some of our opponents may want to. And then at night point will also give us a mercenary every time we commit a crime. And then Great Train Heist just seems like a really interesting card. For 4 mana, you get initial combat. For 3 mana, we can give creatures +1/+0 first strike, and for double red, we can choose an opponent, and whenever a creature we control deals damage to that player, combat damage, we create a tapped treasure. So again, just a great swath of abilities that are always going to be useful in this deck to help us get some more treasures or get some in damage. But let's talk about ways we're going to try to end the game. And there's a lot of really great cards in these 3 colors, really and specifically in black, to help us do this. Marionette Master. Whenever an artifact we control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, target opponent loses life equal to Marionette Master's power. Most time Marionette Master is going to come in as a 4/6, meaning we're kind of doling out 4 life every time. Nadier's Nightblade says whenever a token we control leaves the battlefield, each opponent loses a life when we gain a life. A great ability to start dealing that damage to opponent if they block and kill our treasures. And then Agent of the Iron Throne. Whenever an artifact or creature you control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, each opponent loses a life. What I really like about these abilities here is while those treasures are creatures, these are all still activating. So even if they block and die, right, we're getting the abilities. But if we just then in main 2, because they're, we sacrifice them for mana, again, all of these are still going off. They're still triggering, and we're still getting damage in. So the cool part is we get the threat of the damage in the combat, and then sacrificing them for mana and still getting the value on the back end. Bastion Remembrance will actually take advantage of this because they stay creatures until end of turn, meaning that when Bastion... when they die, Bastion's going to see that and lose life and gain life. What's also really helpful here is that Pitiless Plunderer will see them as creatures dying and making treasures to replace them, which is a huge thing. Revel in Riches gives a little bit of a win con. If we start the turn with 10 or more treasures, we win the game, which is a great ability, and can sneak up out of our opponents out of nowhere if they're not ready to deal with Revel in Riches. And Ruinous Ultimatum, being a one-sided board wipe, can really put us in the right situation, depending on where we're at in the game. And because we can turn these treasures into creatures, I think a Ruinous at the right time could lead to a game or just a lot of damage on our opponents. I'll try my best to kind of hit the airplane view of what I think would be fun with Vhan, but as always said, no deck is ever complete. And this is my version 1.0 of the deck, so of course there were plenty of cards I thought about adding, and these 3 cards are the cards that just barely didn't make the cut, but I still really like and I think would be more than acceptable to keep in mind as we're testing. Hit the Motherlode is just a really fun card. 7 mana to discover for 10. If the discovered card's mana value is less than 10, make that many tapped treasure tokens equal to the difference. Again, if we know we're playing all cheaper cards in the deck, we know Hit the Motherlode is going to lead to a bunch of treasures. Jessica's Will can give us a injection of mana on 1 turn to really push forward into more plays and get more things on board. And then Thousand Moon Smithy comes in, makes a Gnome Soldier artifact creature token with power and toughness equal to the number of artifacts or creatures we control. And then start of our main phase, we can tap 5/1 artifacts or creatures and turn this into a land. And then the land says whenever we used it, to cast our permanent, we make another one of those Gnome Soldiers. So again, just a great card that could really help out alongside our treasures between creatures. The only problem is they're soldiers, they're not outlaws. So they're not going to get given vigilance and haste. But I think it could be a card that could still be worth it if you really want to work into those tokens. But let's get into playtest number 1. Keeping a 3-lander here, Seize of the Spoils for some draw, Clever Concealment to protect the board, and Mayhem Devil whenever a player sacrifices a permanent, deals 1 damage to a target. We just start pinging out some damage. I think that Dragon Skull Summit's going to come and tap pretty much no matter what. So let's get that down turn 1, and we got nothing else really to do, even though we just drew that command tower. Crime Novelist seems really good in this deck. Whenever you sack an artifact, you put a counter on it and get a red mana. Still don't think we have anything to do here turn 2, so we're going to get that command tower down. Turn 3, we draw Greywater's Fixer. Each outlaw creature card in our graveyard has Encore X, where X is its mana value, just a way to get some of our mercenaries back, or our outlaws back when they die or get removed. We see Kellogg for Strike Haste. Whenever it attacks, we make a treasure. We can sack 5 treasures to gain control of a creature. I think I'd probably just slam Kellogg here and try to get into somebody here for Strike Haste, get a treasure, right? And then that way we're starting to get off right on the right foot for whenever we do get Vihaan, which I imagine could be down here next turn. Spire of Industry. Seize the Spoils only gets us one more treasure. I don't mind the idea of just slamming Vihaan here, and that would give Kellogg Vigilance as well. It would turn this into a 3/3. We would swing, getting another treasure because of Kellogg attacking. Maybe get some damage in, and now we have 2 treasures. I don't think we do anything with the 3 mana. I mean, I don't want to sacrifice it just yet. I don't think there's anything quite worth it just yet, and this just gives us more attackers right for next turn. We draw Big Score, which actually might be a card well worth spending all of our mana here for. Pitch something. I don't know, as much as I like the Grey Waters Fixer, it just may not be what we want in our hand this game. We would draw 2 and make 2 more treasures. Really setting us up for some fun. And now all these turn into creatures. They turn into 3/3s. We swing. Kellogg attacks, with First Strike Vigilance and gets us another one. And now we have this board state where our treasures are going to be attacking each turn. Next time we can put down something like Grave Pack, so if they die, everybody else has to sacrifice one. And now we have this board state where we're going to be controlling our tempo. And if we're worried about them dying, right, well, we could sacrifice to Kellogg to take control of something, or let the Grave Pack probably just wipe the board with the amount of our creatures that are dying and that our opponents have to sacrifice to keep suit. So this isn't a bad board state. We're just going to make more treasures, seize the spoils, get the Novelist down and start growing. We have Clever Concealment to protect the board. If we can hold up the 2 white and then tap some creatures to convoke it. I like this board state. Let's move on to playtest number 2. Keep it a 3-lander. Seize the Spoils. Feign the Broker can turn some counters into treasures, turn treasures into Inklings. Process Partnership is a card I really like, making 2 citizens, and we can tap 3 creatures to make a treasure. This is cool because you could attack with the treasures because they have Vigilance, and then tap them before end of turn to make more treasures if we wanted to do that. But turn 1, just get that Sulfur Springs done, I guess. Not much we're going to do turn 1, and I imagine we'll find a lot of the same turn 2. Not too much to do, and I think that's perfectly okay. There's going to be times in our decks where we're not always doing things turn 1 and 2. Here, I think there's a couple arguments. You could do the Seize the Spoils if we want to really refill our hand. Feign the Broker would always be an option. Of course, Process Partnership's an option as well. Vihaan's an option, although it just doesn't... we don't have any treasures on board yet. I think I like the Prosperous Partnership here on turn 3. Making us the 2 citizens, and now once we get a 3rd creature, we can tap them to make some treasures. Get a 4th mana down here. Kind of like the idea of the Seize the Spoils. I like the idea of Feign the Broker. I like the idea of Grim Hireling. I think I'd play the Grim Hireling here, and if we have any attacks for these citizens, we get them in and get the treasures. Otherwise, we would just tap them before our turn to get the treasures. I mean, this is turn 4, so there's a possibility that there's people that are wide open, but for this case we'll assume not. We just tap to make the treasure at somebody's end step with Prosperous Partnership, and we'll come back to our turn. Up to 5 mana, we have enough for Vihaan, which I think is an option. We could also bring Vihaan in and use Prosperous Partnership to tap. We could use, Prosperous Partnership right away to, tap these 3 to make another treasure right now. Remember that Vihaan doesn't have to attack for this. So, hey, now Grim Hireling has, Vigilance and Haste. We could swing in with the 2 treasures, try to get damage on somebody, try to get some more treasures, and then maybe tap Grim Hireling and the 2 treasures to get another treasure. We could potentially, on this turn, come out with, 5 or 6 treasures, depending on what the board state looks like and where we're at, which is great because now, again, we're amassing these treasures, but we also have mana, to things to spend them on. I love something like Pitiless Plunderer now, because now we can swing these treasures in for free, and if they die, we're just getting treasures back. And now this is a board state where we just try to continually tap them with the partnership, get more treasures over on our opponent, We could use the Great Terrain Heist to take an extra combat on the right time, Anguished Unmaking to get something out of the way. Again, not a bad board state here. I think this is what we're kind of moving towards. But let me know, what do you think of Vihaan down in the comment section below. I think it's a really interesting deck. I like the idea of it, turning your chargers into creatures instead of just the Jan Jansen combo style or the, turn them into big mana spells. I like turning them into creatures and kind of forcing our opponents to deal with them in combat, especially the ways we have to replace them if they die or replace them if they deal combat damage, I think makes this deck really fun. And I think that Olivia deck is still not a bad start for this. But I'd love to hear what you think down in the comment section below, and we'll catch you guys next time.